Good day. Welcome to this segment of History from St. Paul's, as we continue to discuss the people and events associated with our site. My name is Park Ranger Michael Callahan. Today, we'll explore the life of Harmon Bloodgood, aka Sergeant Henry Black, a veteran of the American Civil War who rests in our historic cemetery. Harmon Bloodgood's story is unique for our site due to the fact that he's the only member of the pre-Civil War regular army buried at St. Paul's Church. Harmon Bloodgood was born on 4 September 1839 in the town of Keyport in Monmouth County, New Jersey. His father was a laborer, and Harmon had 2 brothers and 1 sister. He eventually found employment as a stonemason. On 25 June 1860, Bloodgood enlisted in the United States Army under the alias of Henry Black. His place of enlistment was New York City. We have no indication of why he would utilize an alias, except possibly become anonymous and devise a simpler and less intimidating name than Bloodgood. No matter what the reason for the pseudonym, Private Black was assigned to the regiment of mounted riflemen, then serving the Mexico territory, which then included the present state of Arizona. The rifles had been raised in 1846, with the intention of having the regiment guard the Oregon Trail. But, to the outbreak of the Mexican War, the rifles were diverted to take part in that conflict. The regiment fought in other engagements, both large and small. In the Battle of Contreras, General Winfield Scott remarked, "Brave rifles, veterans, been baptized in fire and blood and have come out steel." The rifles consider themselves to be an elite unit within the U.S. Army. Like the other mounted regiments of the small regular army, the rifles were armed with Mississippi rifles, instead of the usual carbines. All the mounted regiments were also trained to fight dismounted, if required. When the Mexican War ended, the rifles were deployed to protect the Oregon Trail. In 1849, the first U.S. troops to occupy Fort Laramie, now also a unit of the National Park Service. The rifles were then transferred to Texas, eventually New Mexico territory, where they engaged in numerous small battles with the Comanches and other Indian tribes in the southern plains and southwestern deserts. Life as soldiers of the regular army on the frontier was lonely, and at times both boring and dangerous. The men, and in certain cases the families, had to deal not only with hostile tribesmen, but also a harsh and unforgiving climate, disease, and poor food. The Civil War broke out in April of 1861. Most of the fighting between the United States and Confederate forces would take place east of the Mississippi River, but both armies did face each other in the Southwest early in the war, primarily in the Mexico territory. In 1862, the Rifles, now designated the 3rd United States Cavalry, fought the battles of Alberti and Gloria Pass, also known as the Gettysburg of the West. The 3rd also continued to fight in small acts against the Indians during this time period. Confederate troops eventually withdrew to Texas, and the 3rd Cavalry was then transferred to the east to serve the remainder of the war, again fighting Confederate forces in small engagements in Tennessee, North Carolina, Alabama, and Arkansas. During this time period, Black proved himself to be a trusted and reliable soldier. He was eventually promoted to corporal and finally sergeant before being discharged at the end of enlistment in June of 1865 in Little Rock, Arkansas. Sergeant Henry Black then resumed his life as a stonemason, with the original name of Harmon Bloodgood. Bloodgood returned east and established his permanent residence in Jersey City, New Jersey, while working on construction projects in the New York City area. This was a time of great growth for New York City, and the services of a stonemason were in high demand. He married Mary Jane Carter, whose family had connections with St. Paul's Church. 2 of their children, both named Georgiana, died at very early ages and buried at St. Paul's Cemetery. Bloodgood, of course, would attend the funerals of both children, but he quite possibly maintained his connection with the church through his trade as a stonemason. In the late 1880s, Bloodgood decided living in a boarding house on Mount Vernon Avenue, 2 miles from St. Paul's Church. The boarding house was not far from the local train station, which gave access to ferries transporting passengers to Jersey City, where Bloodgood had a permanent residence. This is also the same time period that the wooden cupola of the church was replaced by one constructed of stone, as well as the construction of a masonry carriage house. Bloodgood may have worked on both projects and resided at the boarding house to make his commute a bit easier, while staying at his permanent home in Jersey City when time allowed. In 1898, Bloodgood is known as living in Brooklyn, again probably working on construction projects not far from his home in New Jersey. Mary Jane Bloodgood passed away in 1908 and is buried at St. Paul's. Harmon decided to leave New Jersey and enter the Toga Soldiers' Home in Chelsea, Maine, where he passed away from heart failure in April 1912. His daughter Martha had his body brought to St. Paul's Church. He was buried in a plot separate from his family. The government supplied the standard headstone for veterans. They enlisted the 3rd U.S. Infantry as his unit during the Civil War, not the 3rd U.S. Cavalry, the correct unit. Park's staff corrected this oversight in 2017 by placing the correct stone's grave in a formal cemetery on Memorial Day. Members of the 3rd U.S. Cavalry staying in Fort Hood, Texas, also participated in the ceremony. Harmon Bloodgood's family have also visited the site several times. Thank you for being with us today, and join us again for more History from St. Paul's.